If you're a young person and you can't afford to live here, then maybe you should not live here. I mean, that is a real thing. I know that we've now grown up in a society that says that you deserve to live where you grew up.
You do. You do deserve to live there. This is the reason, by the way, why everybody hates him.
Yes, that was Ben Shapiro once again going viral on the internet for, I don't know, it's got to be like the 10,000th time since this guy started getting into media, talking about the issues of home affordability, opportunity, and ticking people off as usual in the process. So we're going to get into this and get into some details and see, was he right? Was he wrong? Was he being silly again? This is Media Outlaw. Let's get going. Media Outlaw. Okay, everybody, welcome back to the show. Today, we are going to dive into this viral moment that I just showed you with Ben Shapiro being interviewed on the Trigonometry podcast about home affordability, about opportunity, and some of the things that he thinks that people need to do. Now, I came across this clip on my YouTube stream on this guy Ozma Gold's YouTube channel. I don't know if that's how you say his YouTube name or not, so I'm just going to go with that. You saw the clip, very short. You saw his reaction, which is, of course, people should be able to buy their house wherever they want to live and not have to move. But he pulled that out from a much larger discussion in the interview that Ben was doing with Trigonometry. So let's listen to the full context of this so you can get a better flavor for exactly of what he's getting at here.
I mean, I was looking around at property prices, real estate prices in New York. I'm doing pretty well for myself. I feel kind of poor looking at those.
Oh, no, it's unaffordable. And I'm not saying it's not affordable.
Right.
It absolutely is unaffordable. And if you wanted to make a political difference, what you would do is you would relieve the building regulations. You would make it easier for people to build, not harder. You wouldn't rent control, because if you stop rent controlling, then that creates incentive for people to build. You would allow people to build up further. You would get rid of many of the code regulations that are kind of antiquated. Like there are things you actually could do. And then if you're a young person and you can't afford to live here, then maybe you should not live here. I mean, that is a real thing. Yeah, I know that we've now grown up in a society that says that you deserve to live where you grew up. But the reality is that the history of America is almost literally the opposite of that. The history of America is you go to a place where there is opportunity. And if the opportunities are limited here and they're not changing, then you really should try to think about other places where you have better opportunities. Again, that's not saying that public policy can't change. I think it can, but I think that the solutions being offered are untenable.
Well, I sort of see the problem with what you're saying is that really doesn't sound nearly as good as free stuff.
Correct. The third grade presidential campaign continues to win. It's undefeated, right? Free ice cream, free busing, free childcare, and free money paid for by somebody else.
Okay, so there you go. You have the full context, and you know what? In some circles on the internet and the media, this hasn't gone over very well. I mean, you heard Ozma Gold's reaction, which was, this is why people hate you. But he wasn't the only one. Tucker Carlson even jumped in, claiming Ben doesn't really care about you. In, Tucker's usual unflappable way of speaking. Now, personally, I think that's a little bit silly, but honestly, it just marks another silly moment in many of the things that Tucker Carlson has said over the last few years. So let's get into this. Do you need to move in order to afford a house? Do you need to leave your city, your hometown, even your state in order to be able to afford a house? And is it okay, if that's the case, Is that all right? Are we okay with the idea that if you live in Atlanta, if you live in Durham, North Carolina, if you live in New York City, specifically the boroughs, or in Philadelphia, that you have to kind of just leave in order to afford a house? Well, yes and no. I think here's the deal. This complete controversy, I think, is this meltdown, if you will, is a collision, a conflagration, if you will, of three basic things. The first is Ben's classic line: facts don't care about your feelings. Okay? He's famous for saying that, and he's famous for reinforcing that over the years. The second thing is, and it goes in direct opposition to the facts don't care about your feelings portion of the world, is the rise of fragile snowflake mentalities. Okay, this idea that you're entitled to certain things. And then, of course, the stereotype that conservatives, we just don't have a heart. No heart in us whatsoever. We're cruel. We're entitled at times. We're scoldy. These are really the three, I kind of would say, attitudes that are kind of driving the reaction that Ben has gotten from basically making the statements that he did in this interview. So let's talk about it. First and foremost, do you need to live? Or not live, do you need to move? And I would start by saying this. You got to remember something about America. The story of America is one of movement. Ben, once again, is 100% correct. Sometimes in life, you got to leave your hometown, your city, your state. Sometimes you have to do it. This isn't being cruel. This isn't being mean. It's literally history. Okay? America as a nation exists because people moved. Let's talk about the Great Migration, which is the name given for all of the African Americans that migrated from the south of the country into the north and over to the west. Why did they do that? Well, obviously because the South was racist as hell and mostly Democratic, but that's a completely different subject matter for a different day. They weren't going to have opportunity there because they were black, not because they weren't capable, not because they weren't smart enough, not because they weren't willing to work hard. They were black, and therefore there was never going to be opportunity or as much opportunity for work. It was going to be extremely hard socially, so blacks picked up and moved. Okay? You did what you had to do. Now, think about that. They went north and they went south. They went north and they went west. The West Coast exists literally because people left the 13 colonies. That's right, people. Newsflash. When the country started, we did not have 50 states. We had 13 colonies until people decided, go west, young man and young women, to seek land and opportunity. They hitched up wagons and headed west to build new lives. Leaving your hometown for better pay, for cheaper land, or a stronger economy isn't elitist. It's literally the foundation of this country. We seem to have forgotten that. I mean, honestly, I find it a bit weird that Ozma Gold and others, Tucker, other people on the internet are essentially scolding Ben in reverse about having to leave your home or your state for better opportunity, when literally right now we are having a national argument over the millions of people who have come into this country illegal. People that didn't leave a state, they left a whole country for better opportunity. Some of them left a whole other continent to find opportunity. And yet here we sit, elitist as hell, talking about, oh, I don't want to move out into the country. I don't want to leave the big city. I don't want to leave my state. Really? I mean, come on. You talk about first world problems. It's ridiculous when you think about it, okay? Somewhere along the way, the modern mindset has shifted in this country from you should never have to move, that your birth location is where you should magically adapt to your lifestyle dreams. Listen, that's not the way any of this works. And it hasn't worked like that the entire time this country has been in existence. Let me tell you what you can expect. I'm going to bring in a clip from the House of Cards and Kevin Spacey to make the primary point here. Because here's the uncomfortable truth.
Good evening. For too long, we in Washington have been lying to you. We say we're here to serve you when in fact we're serving ourselves. And why? We are driven by our own desire to get reelected. Our need to stay in power eclipses our duty to govern. That ends tonight. Tonight, I give you the truth. And the truth is this: you are entitled to nothing. You are entitled to nothing. America was built on the spirit of industry. You build your future. It isn't handed to you.
That's right. You are entitled to nothing. To nothing. The American dream is one of opportunity, not entitlement. Yes, you can own a home. Yes, you can get rich. Yes, you can end up financially free. Yes, you can have a wife or a husband and a wonderful family. You can have all of those things, but you're not entitled to it, okay? You're not owed any of that. Your parents wanted you to do better than they did. That's the natural point of view for any parent. But wanting and being entitled to that result are two completely different things. The problem we see today, especially among the younger generation, is that people have lied to you. Yes, they lied to you. You were told, go to college, get a degree, and you'll automatically end up with the life that your parents or grandparents had. Yes, that's a lie. Or more accurately, they left some parts out. See, college gives you skills, a career, a job, that gives you income. But everything else, house, wealth, lifestyle, you have to fight for these things. More importantly, you have to plan for them. They just don't happen organically, especially when you're only 26 or 27 and a couple years out of college. Most parents didn't start their lives living in their forever home. Your grandparents almost certainly lived in a house much smaller than the 3,000 square foot, 4-bedroom house that many 26-year-olds think they should be able to afford when they're barely out of college with a bachelor's degree. Expecting that out of college is not just ambition, it's entitlement. Even when you're in your 30s and 40s and have been working for a while, that doesn't guarantee any of that either. There are things that go into owning a home. There's a process, and it's a lot more than just writing a check and being able to afford the mortgage. So let's talk about the reality of home ownership right now, okay? Let's just talk about housing, because this is where the conversation sort of spins out of control, and then the reactions that I've seen to Ben's comments, both online and YouTube, Facebook, it's kind of over the top. So this is what we hear about home affordability. Even Ben said it in the longer clip that I played. Housing is unaffordable. People can't buy houses because they literally cannot afford to buy the pricing. And They're like, no one can buy anything. But is that really the truth? It's a little bit more complicated than that. But there is light at the end of the tunnel. So if you go to Zillow right now and look up housing in any area, even in Los Angeles and New York City, you are going to find houses that are priced below whatever the national average is for that zip code. Guaranteed. Guaranteed. Now, are they going to look like something out of Architectural Digest? No, they are not. They may need some work. There may be some sweat equity involved. You might have to learn some additional skills in order to fix parts of the house up rather than paying for a contractor. But they are homes. They can be yours. This country still has plenty of starter homes and middle-of-the-road homes located that are affordable. Current homeowners, for example, that can no longer afford their house for various reasons are now facing foreclosures. This always happens, sometimes because of health, sometimes they lost their job, sometimes because they actually have to move and can't keep that house. Whatever the case is, there are people right now where you could go help them out and get a house. Now, this isn't a glamorous way to do it, but in this case, the goal is more important than how you get there. Let's talk about down payments. A 20% down payment is difficult. There's no getting around that, particularly as you get into homes that are $400,000, $500,000 in pricing. That's a lot of money. But that's traditionally why couples saved. I might add, that's also traditionally why it's easier for a couple to do it than a single person, because you have two incomes from which to draw from and begin saving. How do people do this? Well, they didn't go on their vacations every year. They saved that money. They didn't upgrade your iPhones or go out and buy stupid things like this new stupid iPhone sleeve that Apple is selling for $230 and sold out in New York City, where people are bitching about unaffordability. Okay? Listen. People who saved up for homes, they didn't treat home buying like it's going to Best Buy. Even as everybody's complaining about this idea that homes are unaffordable, do you realize that right now there are people buying homes, and not all of those people are billionaires? Okay? So you got to ask yourself, what are they doing? What are they willing to do that you are not? Listen, the idea that you should just walk into adulthood and immediately acquire a polished dream home is ridiculous. That's not a realistic expectation. That's bratty thinking. Now, what's the light at the end of the tunnel? Because you do have options, more than you think. All right? And this is the part that Ben didn't really get into in detail, but that's fine. He's my homie. I'll do it for him. Here's the part that nobody wants to admit. Unaffordability is a real, but it's not universal. Housing is not equally priced across all zip codes, okay? If you're willing to look further out from downtown or the city centers, prices drop, and very often they drop dramatically. If you're willing to start smaller, you don't get a 3 or 4 bedroom house. You get a 2-bedroom house. You can get into the game sooner. Yes, if you're willing to move states, your options open up dramatically. I'll give you a personal example, all right? So I like the garden. I got into it a few years ago. There's nothing better than growing your own food. And when people tell you a tomato that you grew yourself tastes 150 times better than something in the grocery store, we're not making that shit up. It's true. Okay? But I would like to have 5 acres of land. And 5 acres of land in Florida, even in Central Florida, that's a heavy lift. They are not inexpensive. You're going to pay a little grip to get that. Okay? But what if I go to North Carolina? How about if I go to Tennessee? My options open up dramatically because it's less expensive there for that type of acreage. If I'm willing to move, it's much more affordable. Now, could I end up someplace that's like an hour from the closest Walmart? Yeah, I could. Is that convenient? Hell no. That's very inconvenient. But, and here's the key question, how badly do I want the 5 acres to grow and live the life that I want? That's the question you have to ask. It's not about what the cost is for anything, house, job, car. The question is, what are you willing to pay in either money or work in order to have those things? Options exist, but there are going to be trade-offs, and you have to be mature in dealing with reality and accept that those trade-offs exist, and more importantly, they're appropriate. So here's the truth. This whole controversy that's circling around is stupid. Life is not about staying rooted where you were born. Life is about going where the opportunity is. Movement built this country. That could mean, yes, moving out of New York or LA or Atlanta, Miami, to the outskirts of town or to a completely different state. Sacrifice built this country. Okay? Now, you do want to move? That is completely legitimate. You love your city. Fine. No problem. That does not make you a brat, but it does mean you have to save money for the type of down payment for the housing that's available in your area. That means you're going to have to make some trade-offs. You're going to have to approach this from a mature point of view. Okay? You might have to get a smaller house. You might have to, as I've said before, live further out. You might have to spend your evenings going to first-time home buying seminars and programs in order to get additional help for a down payment. There are dozens of these types of programs in each state. Or yes, you might have to move to increase your career options and pay. You know, I have a friend. He has moved across this country. He's originally from New Jersey, just like me. But he doesn't live in New Jersey now. And he has moved 10 separate times across the country, him and his wife. It's like he keeps moving companies in business sometimes. But he did it to increase pay and career paths. And you know what? It's worked. He's now in the place now where he's making mid-6 figures, and he could easily afford a house if he wants to, even though he does live in an area that's not exactly inexpensive for real estate. Okay? Listen, taking risk, making uncomfortable decisions is part of what built this country. It built your parents' life, your grandparents' life. If you were lucky enough to have met your great-grandparents, their lives. You might not get the perfect job in your hometown. In fact, it's unlikely that you will. You might have to move further out. You might have to move states. Listen, too many young people are looking at this from the wrong point of view. Your parents made choices and sacrifices for you. You are an adult. You are now required to make these same good choices and sacrifices in order to have what you say you want in life. I know that, there are parents out there that have tried to make your lives easier, tried to make sure that their kid's life was better. All I can say is To a certain point, parents, you're doing your kids a disservice. Don't do that. I understand it, but don't do it. All right? You don't want to make your kids' life easier. You want to prepare them better than you were prepared so that anything that happens in the modern life, they can handle. Look, kids, here's this word that you guys created, adulting. Here's the thing about adulthood. It sucks. It sucks because you have to make decisions that are not fun. It means you have to think about what you want 5 years from now, not what you want today. 2 years ago, I had money for a down payment for a house, but I also had the opportunity to go on a bucket list trip of a lifetime to Africa. I could have had a house. I chose Africa because, it's Africa. I could have a condo right now if I wanted to, but I don't like HOA fees and I want a garden, which means I need a yard. So I don't have a condo. I'm going to get the house that I want with the acreage that I want. If you want something, land, a house, a better job, a different life, you work for it, you plan for it, you sacrifice for it. What that really means is making uncomfortable decisions today so that you can live more comfortably tomorrow. And yes, sometimes that uncomfortableness might mean you need to move. That's not harsh. That's just reality. And reality, and approaching reality, is ultimately what gives you the life that you want, if you're willing to meet it head on. So don't get on Ben. Sit back and think about, what are my choices? What I want, and what are the alternative ways for me to get there? And then be humble. Be mature. Be willing to do the things that are not easy. And then, you can have that house, even in LA, even in New York. And ultimately, if you really can't, then pick up and go someplace where you can. I mean, trust, there are a hell of a lot better places to live in this country than LA or New York anyway. Without the traffic, without the high costs, without the taxes, and with, let's be honest, much nicer people. So that's going to do it for this episode of Media Outlaw. Please like and subscribe to the newsletter at MediaOutlaw.com. If you've had these discussions with any family members or friends, share this video or share the article that's online with them. Have a good discussion. Kick it around with the people that matter most to you in your lives and see what you can come up. Until our next episode, have a good rest of the week.